Uvod u novu krizu ili kupovina vremena? Zašto je slovenačka vlada obustavila privatizaciju Nove ljubljanske banke na kojoj insistira Evropska unija? Šta je to monetizacija podataka i kakve mogućnosti pruža ova sasvim nova ekonomska grana?
Gaming industrija je jedna od najbrže rastućih u svetu, ali i u Srbiji. Ja sam Dušan Nikolić i u nastavku vam donosim priču o tome.
Dobrodošli u Jazeera Business, ja sam Vavram. Kada je prije nekoliko godina finansijska kriza potresala Sloveniju, glavni problem bio je bankarski sektor te zemlje. Slaba likvidnost, toksični krediti, sve to je zahtijevalo hitnu pomoć Evropske unije. Brisel je zaista pomogao Ljubljani. Slovenija je izbjegla bankrot pomoću plana za sanaciju banaka. Među zahtjevima Evropske unije iz tog plana bila je privatizacija Nove ljubljanske banke. Postupak je podrazumijevao prodaju 3/4 državnog udjela u najvećoj slovenačkoj banci. Prema dogovoru koji je s Evropskom komisijom nedavno postiglo slovenačko Ministarstvo finansija, 50% dionica NLB-a trebalo je prodati do kraja ove godine, a do kraja naredne još 25%. Privatizacija je zaustavljena jer je slovenačka vlada donijela zaključak da nije saglasna s minimalnom cijenom dionice NLB-a u visini 55 eura i rasponom cijene od 55 do 71 eura za dionicu. Osim cijene, prema tumačenju vlade, prepreku privatizaciji predstavlja neriješeno pitanje takozvane prenesene stare devizne štednje NLB-a u Hrvatskoj, zbog čega protiv slovenačke banke pred hrvatskim sudovima teku tužbe koje su uložile Zagrebačka banka i Privredna banka Zagreb. Pred Slovenijom je sada novi krug pregovora s Briselom, a mi smo o očekivanjima i poziciji vlade, kao i trenutnom stanju ekonomije ove države, razgovarali s državnim sekretarom pri Ministarstvu finansija Slovenije, Gorazdom Renčeljom. Slovenian Central Bank expects growth to be 3.5% until the end of this year. A few years ago, there was a completely different situation. Slovenia was in recession and Brussels even mentioned the possibility of bailout. How did you manage to get the economy back on track?
Yes, indeed, Slovenia has undergone a deep recession, a double deep recession actually, and also quite severe banking crisis, financial crisis back in 2013. But we have managed to turn the corner, as you rightly said, and we are now standing firmly on 2 feet. How we did it, it's a mixture of factors, but mainly due to the clear focus and sustained efforts on restoring financial stability and also pursuing prudential macroeconomic policies. In concrete terms, this means raising capital of the state-owned banks, 4 state-owned banks in 2014, in the amount of 2.3 billion euro, which was a strong message and a very important decision, which also boosted confidence in terms of investors and consumers as well. We managed to proceed on our privatization agenda. It underwent a couple of structural reforms in terms of labor market and pension system reforms. We pursued a very active debt management policy, which paid off especially because of the accommodating monetary policy of ECB and the low interest environment in Europe at the moment. All of these mixed up with external factors, favorable external factors, among which I already mentioned accommodating monetary policy of ECB, but also robust demand from our main trading partners. All of this has helped, and we're now looking at a very favorable macroeconomic data, but also a very favorable forecast, as you mentioned, 3.5% by central bank. There are some other estimates which go even higher. What we deem particularly positive is that the growth is not only strong, but is becoming more broad-based. So it's not just export-driven. The domestic demand has picked up, and also we have some resurrection, may I say, from the sectors such as construction, which took a really big hit in the crisis.
Can you say now with complete certainty that financial crisis is behind Slovenia?
I don't think you'll find many, any European country that would say financial crisis is over and done with. I think this is one of the lessons that we learned from the financial crisis of 2013 and 2000 and earlier. But I think you will also find much more confidence among European countries and especially the Eurogroup members that the infrastructure that we put in place in terms of monitoring, supervisory architecture is much more robust, and Europe, I think, today is much more resilient to any future shocks, and that includes Slovenia, of course. When it comes to our finances, we are indeed in a much better position than we were back in 2013, 2014. In terms of public finance, we have pursued consolidation path, and we think we struck a right balance between austerity, so tightening the fiscal policy, but not to the extent that it would strangle the economic recovery. So in a way we pursue sustainability of public finance, but also in a way that it supports recovery that's ongoing. And in terms of debt, this is a legacy of the latest crisis. So our public debt peaked in 2015 at about 83% of GDP, but this has come down in last year below 80%, and the trend that we foresee is going at a similar pace. And in terms of banking sector, which took a big hit in the crisis, our banking sector is today in a very good shape. So in terms of capital position of the banks, it's very strong. The capital adequacy ratio is about 19.2% of GDP, which is good. And there's ample liquidity in the banking sector as well. What is good is that the Slovenian banks are becoming profitable and returning to a very favorable positions. So all in all, I think we are still dealing with some of the legacy issues, such as NPL, for example, the relatively high level of non-performing loans. But even in this area, the pace at which Slovenia is reducing the NPL ratio is much higher than the EU average.
Banking sector was one of the main problems during recession. Then came Brussels' approved plan of privatization, and now with the postponements of NLB privatization, you're on the start again. What do you expect from new negotiations with Brussels?
Well, first of all, I'd say the banking sector, as I said, is not only in good shape, but we've also undergone considerable consolidation and also privatization. Privatization is not only referred to the Nove ljubljanske bank, our biggest bank. We have fully privatized our second largest bank, NKBM, Nova Kreditna banka Maribor, in 2016, but also consolidated the sector as such. So in 2015, we've seen winding down of two relatively small banks, Probanka and Factorbanka, accounting for about 2% of the market share, but also the merger of Abanka and Banka Celje, which today represents the third largest banking group. In terms of NLB, it's true, we had, due to the bail-in in late 2013 and the state aid measure that was approved by the European Commission, we gave certain commitments to the European Commission, namely to, one of the commitments was to sell off NLB down to 25% plus one share, which would stay in Slovenian hands. And the remaining 75% would have to be sold off by the end of 2017 by original commitments, which we changed this year in order to facilitate and enable the selling process. And the new commitments, as they stand today, oblige us to sell off 50% by the end of this year and the remaining 25% by the end of 2018. As you rightly pointed out, Slovenian government, acting actually as a General Assembly of the sovereign holding, decided to suspend the privatization process. This is due to the fact that we received, the sovereign holding received advice from the financial advisor that the litigation and cases in relation to the transferred foreign currency deposits in former Ljubljanska banka head branch of Zagreb represent such a risk in terms of price and in terms of the process, that it would prevent us to successfully conclude the privatization process at this moment.
What could be consequences for Slovenia if new negotiations with the EU do not succeed?
I mean, it's hard to say, what does it mean that the negotiations do not succeed? As I said, we started this with these talks. There's positive signs for Brussels. I think they understand the position that Slovenian government represents. Going back to the Ministry of Finance, we have a clear instruction by the Slovenian government to try and renegotiate the commitments and the terms of the privatization in a way that would enable the NLB to stay as a strong regional player, and also to keep an eye on the commitments in a way that they would allow a further development of the NLB as a group.
Iako nije u centru pažnje medija i poslovne javnosti, gaming industrija u regiji grabi krupnim koracima naprijed. Posla ima za mnoge profile tehnoloških stručnjaka, a sve više mladih koji u upoznavanju videoigrica vide priliku za karijeru. Kakve su perspektive za razvoj tog sektora u Srbiji, zna Dušan Hadžinikolić.
Video igre deci rođenoj 80-ih bile su ceo svet. Gejmerske konzole bile su glavni izvor zabave na školskim rođendanima. Industrija videoigara se u poslednjih 30 godina razvila do neslućenih razmera, a to su shvatila i deca iz 80-ih rođena u Srbiji, danas odrasli ljudi koji su pokrenuli firme za pravljenje igara.
Jako je dramatična drugačija situacija bila u vreme kada smo mi počinjali. To je bilo 2005. To je već 12 godina od ovog momenta. To je bukvalno bio moment kada je YouTube nastajao i moment u kom niko ništa nije radio vezano za gaming. Čak niko nije ni znao šta je to u Srbiji. Lagano kako smo mi radili, počinjali su da se stvaraju manji indie takozvani timovi koji su sastavljeni od par ljudi, koji su počinjali da rade neke svoje igre, neki su propadali, neki su uspeli nešto da urade i sad je dramatično drugačija situacija. Sada trenutno imamo dosta timova, mnogo je veće tržište nego ikad i mislim da idemo dobrim koracima napred.
Osim firmi koji se bave proizvodnjom igara, u Srbiji se otvaraju i studiji koji se bave filmskom animacijom, ali svoju šansu vide i u animaciji za video igre.
Gaming je jedna od od grana industrije zabave koja se najbrže razvija i ona u celoj industriji zabave trenutno ima najveće budžete i najveće su zarade. Tako da polako prevazilazi i budžete i zarade hollywoodskih blockbustera. Tako da je budućnost jako perspektivna. A takođe i u Srbiji sve više i više firmi koji se bave gamingom, što stranih, što domaćih, i te firme imaju jako dobre rezultate i jako brzo se razvijaju.
Dinamičnost ove grane privrede u široj javnosti prolazi nezapaženo. Ubrzani razvitak gaming industrije iziskuje i veću potrebu za obučenim kadrovima, pa je potrebno organizovati njihovu kvalitetnu edukaciju, pogotovo onih mladih pa i najmlađih. Carter Studio se pre svega bavi animacijom za filmove, a sarađuju sa studijima u Hollywoodu, Bollywoodu i Netflixom. Ipak, zbog važnosti gaming industrije, pružaju obuku mladima koji žele da nauče da prave i dizajniraju video igre.
U poslednje vreme sve više i više imamo mladih ljudi, te smo s tim u vezi osnovali i kurseve za tinejdžere od 12 do 17 godina i tu imamo jedan veliki broj mladih ljudi koji se interesuje baš za gaming. Oni uglavnom igraju video igre i onda želeli bi da nauče i da ih prave.
Mad Hat Games pravi video igre koje se distribuiraju po celom svetu, a do sada su najviše sarađivali sa američkom kompanijom Big Fish, sa kojom su izdali više od 30 igara. Zbog toga oni koji rade u ovoj kompaniji moraju dobro da znaju svoj posao.
Generalno javno mnjenje postaje svesnije da je IT nešto što je nova stvar i što je trend u celom svetu i što je budućnost, i mislim da i kod nas postaje sve bolja klima za to.
Glavni gaming centri u Srbiji su Beograd i Novi Sad. Ipak ne bave se svi samo proizvodnjom igara, neki se i takmiče na svetskim prvenstvima. Tako je gaming selekcija Srbije 2015. godine bila i prvak sveta.
Gamera u Srbiji ima baš dosta. Mislim, kad neko kaže gamer, to nije tako jednostavno, samo neko ko igra video igre. Postoje nešto što se zove casual gamer ili osoba koja igra video igre čisto iz zabave, da potroši vreme, a postoje osobe koje igraju video igre da bi dostigli neki nivo na koje mogu da se takmiče za recimo određeni novac ili medalje i pehare.
Najrazvijenija gaming zemlja u svetu je Južna Koreja, gde igrači imaju status rock ili fudbalskih zvezda. Srpski gejmeri su daleko od toga, ali ako budu pratili brzinu razvoja srpske gaming industrije, brzo će se približiti svojim kolegama iz Azije. Dušan Hadžinikolić, Jazeera Business, Beograd.
U Zagrebu je održana konferencija o data science ekonomiji. Riječ je o sasvim novoj oblasti, čiju je vrijednost prepoznala Evropska unija, koja snažno promoviše njen koncept. Međutim, rijetke su organizacije i države koje znaju koristiti alate da bi izvukle korist iz analize podataka, kojih je sve više. Prema nekim procjenama 2,3 hiljade milijardi dnevno. O data science ekonomiji za Jazeera Business govori Steve Lok, direktor digitalnog marketinga uglednog poslovnog magazina The Economist. S njim je razgovarala Neira Kozarić.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lok. Can you explain for the viewers that are not so familiar with the terms the importance of data science?
Sure. Data science is really, when we're talking about it in terms of marketing, is the practice of essentially pulling things like insights out of existing raw data. It's taking algorithmic thinking and algorithmic design on data to be able to look at patterns and judge things like frequency of data usage or velocity and things like that in order for to apply it to a particular business problem. The use of the data science terms, I think these days can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
You work for The Economist. Can you explain us on their example, how did they use data to generate more growth?
So for us, the Economist cares a lot about our customers and who they are and what they're interested in. And because we're a content company, our content also requires a level of understanding that is pulled out of the raw text. We have 174 years of published content, which can be just way too much. And it can be a challenge to generate a level of relevancy for a brand that is both that old and respected, but also is producing content on a regular basis. When you apply something like data science to content, it can look like pulling out things like semantic understanding of a particular sentence or a passage in an article. That's different than sort of traditional ways that would look at things like keywords, which can be very simplistic. Today we know that the word apple is a very different meaning today as to 10 years ago. The word Trump is different almost on a daily basis, right?
But can you put it in numbers?
There's been very steady growth in the digital arena for us for the last about 12 or 13 years since we've been tracking it. Very steady growth, probably a few percent, every year. We started to implement these kinds of modern marketing practices that were heavily weighed inside of technology and leading from a technology basis, some of which incorporated data science. In general, it was a lot of data mining and understanding of that data from about 2014. And from 2014, we started to approximately double our subscription revenue every year, to the point where I think we started at a little bit under £10 million for revenue, and I think we're above 70.
Where do organizations make the most mistake in using data science? And is it hard for an organization to make this transition regarding marketing into knowing the customer as a person rather than using it like a statistic?
To be honest, I think it's very difficult. Trying to disrupt a particular industry is always difficult. It creates a lot of opportunity at the same time that it can force the exposure of 2, 3, 4 different departments or industries together, and they make them collide. The collision can be very difficult because now you're asking people who are traditionally masters in one domain to have to understand a different domain. And for what we're looking at, whether we're talking about data, whether we're talking about tech, for marketing to move into this space, it's not enough to just be an operator, in the area. Much less, talking about the future with, robots and automation and taking all our jobs away, in 10 years. We can't just be button pushers anymore. What's happening is that it's really requiring today's marketers and today's advertisers to learn and be literate in what it means to understand data. And data literacy is almost another language.
How far targeting the customer that really went with big data?
We have, this might scare some people, but we have a system by where I can actually go in and I can look at an individual person's profile. Maybe it's you, maybe it's me, I'm in there, I'm definitely in there, and my picture is in there also. We can, if we wanted to, send out a campaign to one person.
So that brings me to my next question. How data science was used during the USA elections by the Trump administration?
There's a lot of discussion today about privacy and what it means to give information, to opt in, to opt out. The reality is that on an everyday basis, we volunteer an amazing amount of information on things like Facebook or even just clicking through sites, and it's very difficult to get around. There are companies that have been smart enough to use this kind of information, use the algorithmic thinking, that is the core of data science, to then figure out the most effective people to influence and how to influence them. Literally to the point of using certain words with people. I mean, it's fascinating and scary, right? Particularly inside of politics, to see how a populace can be moved in a very real way by influencing just the right portions of people. I think the data science can certainly be used for maybe more innocent purposes, more commercial, only kinds of purposes.
Could you call it a misuse or not?
I don't think it's a misuse. I think that it is, it's benefited from the fact that it's the early adopter syndrome. People don't understand it yet. One day people, the general populace, will actually understand it. And when they understand it, there will be more of a movement towards either maybe opting in or opting out of this kind of thing.
The past few years were years of data-driven marketing, so where do you see things going next?
I think that we've been talking about data-driven marketing for a long time. And I think the big promise of data-driven marketing has been that ability to understand an individual customer. We're there now. The next big thing, I think are going to be these platforms that exist outside that are able to show you an individual profile of a person. This is kind of a virtual personality, of me, of you, of anyone. And sure, it's kind of scary in that sense. But again, the capability is there, right? So if the capability is there, there's going to be commercial enterprise around it. What we'll be talking about, I think, for the solid next 3 years are companies finally being able to break down a lot of their data silos and to be able to pull them into this agnostic type of customer data platform to, again, essentially, create an egalitarian data marketplace inside of a particular company. It's going to federate that data across, and it's going to open up a ton of new opportunities, bad and good use, bad use. I'm not judging it, or anybody can judge it, but it's really going to I think revolutionize how we even think of what data-driven marketing is, when we really can build a virtual personality on an individual person.
So, Mr. Lok, thank you for speaking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
Evropska unija kaznila je Google s 2,4 milijarde eura zbog zloupotrebe tržišne pozicije. Google je uslugama za online kupovinu davao prednost određenim kompanijama prilikom pretraživanja. Nanijelo je to štetu ostatku konkurencije, što je prema evropskim antimonopolskim propisima nezakonito. Ovo nije prvi put da su američke tehnološke kompanije na udaru evropskih regulatora. Prije manje od godinu Apple je kažnjen sa 13 milijardi eura na ime neplaćenog poreza u Irskoj. Japanski proizvođač zračnih jastuka za automobile Takata podnio je zahtjev za zaštitu od bankrota u matičnoj zemlji i Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama. Iz kompanije poručuju da su na taj potez bili primorani kako bi nastavili sa zamjenom neispravnih zračnih jastuka koji se povezuju s pogibijom 16 osoba. Od kada se saznalo za grešku, sa svjetskog tržišta je povučeno 100 miliona vozila u koja su bili ugrađeni ovi zračni jastuci. Pred Takatom je reorganizacija. Od kompanije Key Security Systems sa sjedištem u Detroitu tražit će 1,6 milijardi dolara pomoći, te će ona ući u vlasničku strukturu Takate. Evropska unija će odgovoriti protiv mjerama ukoliko tamošnji proizvođači čelika pretrpe kolateralnu štetu zbog uvoznih ograničenja koja razmatra administracija američkog predsjednika Donalda Trumpa. Kazala je to komesarka Unije za trgovinu nakon što je objavljeno da istraga američke administracije o tome da li čelik proizveden u inostranstvu predstavlja rizik za nacionalnu sigurnost u završnoj fazi.
Mi smo prijatelj i saveznik SAD-a i smatramo da bismo bili nepravedno pogođeni ovim. Morat ćemo provjeriti da li su mjere u skladu sa odredbama Svjetske trgovinske organizacije i ako pretrpimo veću štetu, naravno da ćemo odgovoriti protumjerama. Neću reći kako i kada, ali pripremamo se za to.
Toliko o Al Jazeera Businessu. Ukoliko ste nešto iz sadržaja ovog i prethodnih magazina propustili, posjetite našu zvaničnu web stranicu, a ekipu Al Jazeera Businessa potražite na društvenim mrežama. Hvala na pažnji i doviđenja.